right, so welcome to the third installment of the Friends of Konza Prairie Speaker Symposium. And today we have with us award-winning photographer Barb Slyke,
Oh dear.
whose photograph just sold at the Symphony of the Flint Hills art show. One of two photos that was accepted in the show, and just went for $750. So yeah, she's a superstar photographer who's here to share with us her insights on how to photograph the prairie. And I also love to photograph the prairie, and so she has kindly agreed to let me come and join and talk as well. So we have some things we want to share with you and some of our photos and thoughts, but with a disclaimer that we are not, even though we have sold some photos, we're not professional photographers, and the technical details that professional photographers would immerse themselves in is not going to be something that we're going to be addressing or particularly knowledgeable about. So the technical details will be held at the side. This is going to be for people who are going out on the prairie and want to take a nice photo. And I'll also be addressing some of the things that I run into here at Konza Prairie with working with people who want to identify plants and animals from their photos. So without any further ado, we'll get started with the PowerPoint. So I thought I'd start with showing some of our favorite photos. Here, Purple Coneflower by Barb. A summer morning silhouette, that's one of mine. Always one of the favorite topics to photograph at Konza Prairie, the newborn bison calves. This would be in April or May. This is one of Barb's photos.
Probably April.
Probably April. Yeah. And here's one of mine in, I believe this is September, judging by the plants. And this was a rainy day in September. This is a Barb Slyke photo, and I would know it's a Barb photo anywhere because Barb loves clouds and she loves interesting patterns in clouds. And combine that with snow on Konza, and you've got a wonderful tableau of an image, and Barb will be out there capturing it. You'll notice that in almost every photo that she takes, that clouds are going to be there in some form. I don't know that you've taken just a whole lot of pictures without some kind of cloud in it. I guess we'll find out. Here's another cloudy day picture, but this one's one of mine. I love to put plants, especially unappreciated plants, up against the sky. And so this is wavy leaf thistle in June against a stormy sky. So we have different styles and we have different approaches, but both of us have the same thing that motivates us, a passion for the subject. We really, truly love the prairie and try to capture that love in our photos. And so if you are photographing something that you love, it will be reflected in the outcome. Okay, so equipment. Barb's equipment is fancy. She's got a Nikon D7200. Is that what you say?
D7200.
D7200. You want to say anything about your camera?
It's a nice DSLR, but it's 6 years old. And so, that's ancient in camera technology, but it still gets the job done. And I can utilize it to make the images that I want. So I'm not upgrading at this point. Don't feel like just because you don't have the latest and greatest that you can't take good photos, because older equipment can still work just fine. In fact, I have a camera, my backup camera is 11 years old and it still takes great photos. So I think there's more to photographing than just the equipment, and most of it is just here behind your eye. So
So do you have multiple lenses that you switch out?
I mostly use my 18 to 140. I do have a 50 lens. I have a 70 to 300, but I mostly use my 18 to 140. That's 18 gives a really wide, nice landscape, and 140 can zoom in closer to plants or animals without being right on top of it. So it's what I end up using most often.
And if you're not familiar with the vernacular, it's 18 millimeter to 140 millimeters is what she's referring to. And I have a Canon Rebel digital SLR or DSLR camera at my disposal, but I haven't used it for a couple of years. And that's mainly because when I'm out photographing, I am hiking as well. I'm doing other things. So photographing isn't my primary reason for being out on the prairie. So I use my pocket camera, my Canon PowerShot G9 Mark II, G9X Mark II pocket camera, which is a really nice camera. It takes good pictures, maybe not quite as versatile as Barb's camera, but it can zoom. And it takes some pretty good pictures, and I can keep it in my pocket. And also, I use my iPhone and my iPhone 10.
Mm-hmm.
Take a lot of pictures with that, and especially if I'm at home walking the dogs, I'll have my iPhone in my pocket, and that's the picture I took of the summer morning silhouette, the grass against kind of the salmon background. That was an iPhone photo.
You know, I've heard it said, which is the best camera to use, and I always say the one that you have with you. And with today's the cell phones, they are incredibly intuitive and take some amazing photographs. And the small camera technology is pretty awesome these days. They're very intuitive. So don't think that you have to spend an awful lot of money with a big camera. It's what I happen to have.
And you've got some intel on the new camera coming out of, is it Google? The Google camera? Barb? No?
No.
What was the camera that you were talking about that was
Oh, my son has a Google Pixel, and it's a great camera phone.
okay.
Or yeah, phone camera, right? So
Yeah, so the with each iteration of our smartphones, we're getting better and better cameras to the point where pretty soon we won't need other cameras. We'll just be using our phones.
if you want to drop 1,500 to 2,000, get the new iPhone 13 Pro X is coming out in September, but I did have somebody show me their 12 Pro, and it'll do everything except the dishes, I think, you know. So
Yeah.
pretty amazing.
Well, yeah, we're spending
For
that money.
price.
We're spending that money anyway, right? To get the new phones. So, you know, you might as well learn how to use the camera on that phone.
Mhm.
Okay, so and Barb and I, we happen to work together, and we're in the same office together, and we have these conversations a lot. That photographing with digital cameras has completely transformed photography. It's made it a lot easier to take better photos. And you know, this is something that Barb likes to say is, you know, everybody is a photographer, and they are. And you can take photos, and we're seeing them. We're seeing them up on social media. So watch out though. And this is where I've run into problems. Digital cameras make taking thousands of photos easy, but you can quickly get overwhelmed with taking too many photos. So if you're going to go this route, you got to be willing and ready and prepared to delete those photos. Make yourself do it regularly. And I've got a little video that I took. This is my camera uploads. This is just my cell phone. So when I connect my cell phone to my laptop, it uploads the photos to my laptop under a folder called camera uploads. And here's a video of just March, April, May, and June photos that I've taken in those 4 months. So here we go. And we're going to speed it up. we're finally into June. There. And so if you've looked at the bottom, it's 3,761 photos just for those 4 months. And so
Head Starf Goofy.
what?
I'm looking at the titles of your big things down there.
Oh, yeah, Barb.
Barb, Head
Oh,
Starf,
yeah, that's when,
Head Starf, Goofy. It's like, I own it, whatever it is.
that's when you had a scarf. I'll have to show it to you. Maybe I'll find it and show everybody. Yeah, Barb and Slyke photographing winter K1B. So I do eventually, so I'd gone through and done some February, March, and I clean them out, give them a title, put them in a folder, but it takes a lot of work. And I have a tendency, and I'll show you here in a little bit, I have a tendency to take multiple photos of certain images. And there's a reason for that. So motivation, why are you taking that photo? Well, it varies among people. Are you trying to get a pretty photo? Are you documenting a species? Regardless of kingdom, are you looking at a plant, an animal, fungus? You know, are you just trying to document something? Verification of a species, kind of the same thing. If you're photographing a plant for potential identification, I get this a lot. I get people sending me photos of a plant and asking me, what is it? And if you want to get a decent picture of a plant, and Retta and I have had this conversation, bend your knees, get down to the level of the plant. Make sure the photo's in focus. I've gotten a lot of photos that have not been in focus, and try to capture the flower or the bloom, because a plant that is not in bloom is harder to identify than a plant that is in bloom. And also try to get a silhouette of the plant so you can see the leaves and the attachment of the leaves. Okay, so I've got 2 photos of the same species. It's not the same individual plant, but the same species. Which photo do you think is better? The one on the left or the one on the right? You know, you could argue that you know, they're both okay. If you're looking for identification, the one on the right is better because you can get an idea of its size. The one on the left, you have no clue what size that is. You have no clue what the leaf attachment is. I mean, I guess they're both okay. You can tell if you knew what the plant was, you know, it's French cocoon. But the photo on the left doesn't tell you a whole lot about how to identify that plant, whereas the photo on the right helps you out. It shows you how tall it is and the leaf attachment. Okay, so I've got a story. This picture on the right is a photo that was sent to me. It was texted to me with the question at the bottom, what is this? And I'm going to move. Let's see here if I can move. I don't think I can. Okay. So I showed this to Barb yesterday and I said, okay, look at this picture. What is this? And what'd you say, Barb?
What is what?
Exactly.
What am I looking at?
Exactly. I'm like, what am I supposed to identify? Am I supposed to identify, you know, let me see if I can get my cursor to work. There we go. Am I supposed to identify these leaves? Am I supposed to identify the trunk of the tree? Am I looking back here? What am I looking at? So, okay, so this was my reply in the top blue. The tree in the middle of the photo or the buds, I can't tell which one you're asking about. And so the reply from the person was the one with the buds. I sent one with buds closed and one with buds open. And so I was trying to give this person instructions on what to do. So they were asking about that. They wanted me to identify the tree from that. And I said, okay, try to get a clear photo of that bud against the sky. So get under it and shoot up so I don't see because this picture is difficult simply because of the noise in the background. All of the tangle of twigs and stems and other things in the background, it makes it really hard to see what it is. So I was trying to get them to shoot it without a bunch of stuff in the background. So I got 2 new photos, that one and that one. Much better, right? And so now I was able to identify what it was. Could say, oh, that's an Ohio buckeye tree. And they were perfectly happy. That's all they wanted. So my point being, if you're trying to send something to somebody for identification, keep in mind what the photo looks like that you're sending them. It also helps to have some way to judge the size of the plant. So this plant in this photo, it's a perfectly nice photo, but how big is it? You can't tell how big this plant is. So what do you need to do? Put your hand on it and look at how tiny that is. Would you have guessed that this plant, unless you knew what it was, would you have guessed that that plant is maybe 2.5 inches tall? It makes a huge difference. If you're just trying to get a pretty picture, then that one's fine. But if you're trying to get an identification of a plant, put a coin, put your hand, put a pen, something next to it for scale reference. So here's a good picture of a plant that can be identified easily. This is not going to be an award-winning photo for anybody, but it is a decent photo for identifying the plant. It's in focus, it's light and bright enough that you can see the color, you can see the scale, the flowers are silhouetted, so detail can be discerned. If we needed to zoom in, I guess it's not going to let me zoom in. If you needed to zoom in, you could. So yeah, this is a good one. If you are trying to get a picture of a plant for identification, get low, shoot up towards the sky. There's bee balm. And there's white prairie clover. Both good examples of getting away from the noise so you can get a decent photo. Again, this is why I take so many pictures, because I've got different motivation. Sometimes I'm just trying to get a photo to put in my library of plant photos. Sometimes I just need a picture of bee balm, or I just need a picture of white prairie clover. It doesn't have to be artistic at any level, but it needs to be a decent picture. So be aware of the things behind it that can mess up the silhouette. So plants versus animals. Plants are much easier to photograph than animals. That's pretty intuitive, right? Plants don't fly away. Plants hold still and let you think about things and create a lovely shot. Animals move, and when they move, unless they're bison. Bison are pretty good at holding still. But bison will always start pooping the minute you want to try to take a picture. Right, Barb?
Yep.
Watch out for that. If you're taking pictures of bison, make sure they've already pooped before you take their picture. So
unless that's what you want to document. So,
Right. That's always a comment. If that's what you want, then go for it. Just keep in mind what you want. So photographing animals is much different than photographing plants. Practice and a quick shutter speed helps. And a telephoto lens. And so Barb mentioned that when you are photographing bison, for example, Barb, do you change lenses?
No, I don't like changing lenses out in the field. Sometimes I will take my old camera with a longer lens on it because I don't use it as often. But I most often use my 18 to 140 lens, and Yeah, if I know that I'm going to be out, and I will put the 70 to 300 on, but I don't like to change out in the field. If I have a vehicle to change it in, sometimes I will.
And why is that?
Changing out in the field, just every time you open up your camera, you allow a lot of dust inside. And so I make sure that I never do it outside in the open and a vehicle is closed, and do it as quickly as possible.
So if you were to get dust in your camera, what would be your options for cleaning it?
You could use a blower. I don't have one right here to, yeah, let me get it real quick. Since I'm at home, I have one of these handy dandy little deals that has a filter on it. You can take your lens off and you can clean your sensor. You can blow things off your sensor. And there are also self-cleaning swabs that you can clean your sensor, or you can have it professionally cleaned. If you get a lot of dust in your sensor, it will show up as spots on your photograph. So I try not to do much changing out in the field. So
if you needed to get your camera professionally cleaned, where would you get that done?
well, Wolves used to do it, but they're closing down in Topeka. There's another guy, Photronic in Topeka. If somebody wants to know, I can give you the name of a guy who has cleaned mine professionally before, does a great job. He's an individual camera repair guy in North Topeka, does a great job.
It's a pretty specialized skill, and you probably need to go. Well, obviously, you need to go to at least Topeka or Kansas City or Wichita. You're going to have to go somewhere to get it done, right?
Yeah, you can. There are great YouTube videos, and I do have, with Ken Stafford's help, I did get my sensor cleaned myself, and I will do it again. But the first time I was leery about doing it. So, but there are a lot of great YouTube videos out there for cleaning your camera sensor yourself. So,
Okay. Okay, so animals don't hold still, but both Barb and I have managed to photograph them. I will tell you that I love photographing butterflies, but they are, especially the regal, they are very difficult to capture. The Interestingly enough, the males are faster and more difficult to catch than the males are faster, more difficult to catch than the females. Whoops, we have somebody coming in. There we go. We have Chris Harold. And so once the females show up, everybody slows down. And so this last weekend, the female regal fritillary showed up. There we go. Here comes Greta. And so they were easier to photograph. Barb, I know you got this photo during the September migration. And they were, do you recall the day? Do you recall if it was a windy day?
no, I don't. I didn't record that on it. Yeah, I don't know.
It's really, it helps if there's multiple monarchs like we saw during the migration. It really helps. And they were nectaring on the goldenrod, and that's just a beautiful photo. I just love that photo. But
They
shooting,
were, yes, they were very thick those days, and you could often find multiple ones on the same plant. So
it's beautiful. With my photo, I shot this raw, which means that I had the setting open to as much information as the camera could collect. And so this particular photo, while most photos, I don't know about you, Barb, most of my photos are on the low end, the file size is 500 kilobytes, and on the high end, I'm usually around maybe 7 megabytes. This particular photo is probably closer to 25 megabytes. What size are yours, Barb?
I don't know. Sometimes up to 17 to 20,
Yeah, yeah.
uncropped and unedited. So
Okay, so plants are easier to photograph. There's one of Barb's of Dakota verbena, one of mine of big blue stem. So we have, I tend to have a lot of plant photos. I don't know about you, Barb. But a macro lens, a lens to photograph very small, fine, or detailed structure often helps make a lovely photo for plants. But you got to get down. You've got to use those knees. So start practicing your squats and consider what's around the plant. Will the photos beside or behind the plant compete or complement the photo? The background photo here on the PowerPoint could be taken right now. This is a July view of Canada wild rye. And so here, because it's basically all Canada wild rye, that's what I wanted. Whoops, was just a complete background of the same thing. So here's some nice photos of plants. And obviously, we got down to the level of the plant to get the picture. So I've been trying to take pictures of plants for well over 30 years. These are photos from Central Texas from 1988, I think. And these were taken with film with my, I think this was my Nikon single lens reflex camera that I got for graduation for high school. And I loved wildflowers and I was taking photos. And this is the classic bend over from the waist and just shoot straight down. And this is what I had. And so you're going to recognize, though I didn't have a clue when I was taking them, but, pale poppy mallow, prickly pear, Dakota verbena, and spiderwort. I had no clue what these were, but I was taking the pictures and I thought I was a great photographer to the point that I had these printed. These are actual film prints, and I put them in a photo album, and I pulled them out and scanned them. And then I can't believe how hideously awful they are, but I thought they were pretty good. So I've been trying to do this for over 30 years, is my point. Okay. Next, if you're trying to get a pretty picture, consider the time of day. Okay. So the light changes throughout the day. Sunset, sunrise, sunset, and twilight have the long wavelengths of light, and they're going to give you your best photos. Shooting in the middle of the day is okay. It can get really overexposed. It can get too bright, but it's okay to shoot in the middle of the day if it's cloudy. And here's Barb's thing: clouds can make your photos interesting. Okay, so here's a picture of just common milkweed during the sunrise, and you get that really pretty golden light. So sunrises are great. Here's a sunset, and I'm kind of shooting into the sun, but again, we get the long wavelengths of light in the shadows. But notice the sky. Not the world's best day to go out photographing because it's a completely clear sky. So here's a classic Barb photo of sunsets. She loves sunsets. And this is from in front of your house?
yeah, actually, it's a sunrise that's looking out to the
Really?
east. Yeah, it's a
Okay.
sunrise just to the east of my house. So I noticed the power pole there, and I know that's in my neighbor's yard. So
Well, if I hear of any vandalism of knocking over the power pole, I'll know who did it. And this is the photo that Barb took that was submitted to the Symphony of the Flint Hills. You want to talk about this one?
you know, oftentimes shooting in the middle of the day is not the best because you get really harsh light and harsh shadows on things. But sometimes when you want that typical summer blue sky, white puffy clouds, they only show up in the middle of the day. It might be late morning before they show up and fill the sky. And by middle of the afternoon, they start getting really way too bright. I think this was taken in July of last year at about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I was sitting in the office and noticed the cloud. So I said, I know exactly where I need to go to get a shot. And this was of the K1B hills on the east side of Konza. So the shadows are on the hills, the clouds are, you know, putting shadows on the grass and in the hills. And you have those puffy white clouds. So by later in the afternoon, they're gone or completely different. So sometimes shooting in the middle of the day, depending on what you're trying to shoot and what you want, will work okay, but you have to know what your light is doing and use it to your advantage.
Okay, so this is actually the same location, but this is one I took. I'm looking east, whereas Barb was looking west in that picture. So imagine I'm on, as Ken would say, Sugarloaf Hill. I think I'm over to the right a little bit, but I'm looking basically at where Barb's standing and taking a picture the other direction. It's a different day. I think this one was taken in September, but I initially found this photo to be kind of boring until I turned it black and white, and then it popped. Yeah. So consider black and white if you're looking for an interesting shot of prairie with dramatic clouds. And I love the road going nowhere, basically. Okay, so
Black and white can be very effective when you're wanting to emphasize the contrast, which is what you did in that photo, and it works very nicely.
exactly, yeah. So you've taken a photo, or like me, you've taken 1,500 photos. Now, what do you do with them? And the key to many good photos is editing. And you know, I asked Barb this question when I was putting this together. I said, how often do you post photos that are unedited? And what'd you say, Barb?
Never.
Yeah, I mean, even simply cropping it is a form of editing. In fact, that's your favorite, right? So she doesn't post any photos that haven't been edited. So keep that in mind. If your goal is to simply post a photo on Facebook, then editing is optional. But you know, anymore, there's some really good photos posted in Facebook. So taking a look at how to edit. And so I put there it is. I put a before and after picture on here. This is simply Plains Wild Indigo. This is from this year, from April 9th of 2021. And, you know, it's a perfectly fine picture. It's young Plains Wild Indigo on an overcast day. But if you look at the picture, you can see that the sun has broken through, and the sun is kind of over my right shoulder as I'm facing this plant. It's late afternoon, and so the sun's kind of off on the about, you know, it's probably about 2:30, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. But I look at this picture and I see muted colors. I see that the plant really isn't popping away from its background, and that the sky is obviously overcast. And so what I wanted to do with this particular picture is draw the plant away from its background and to give the sky a little bit of color. So there's my edit. I added a little bit of contrast, a tiny bit of color, not a whole lot, and I made the sky just a little bit bluer. Putting them together, it doesn't look like I did a whole lot. Oh, and also I straightened out the back horizon. So the back horizon, the picture was kind of straight, but not completely. And so I straightened out the back horizon. Now editing, Barb and I have had conversations about this. Editing is a very personal process. It's very much like decorating your house. Some people like a lot of color. Some people like a lot of decoration, and some people don't. It's a very personal process. Um, you do what you like. If you, some people might like the picture on the left better than the picture on the right. Some people would have gone a different direction. It's all of it's okay. But one thing I was going to show you, I was going to go ahead and share with you my process of editing. There we go. Okay, so this is the program that I use. It's called Lightroom. And if I've already loaded some images for potential editing, and the first 9 images might look like they're all the same, but they're not. There are 9 individual shots that I took of the same thing, because some of them are going to be better than others. My thinking on this is that the image that I want to capture is very transient or ephemeral, that I only have that exact moment in time to capture it. And so I choose to take multiple shots of one image and then go back and delete the ones I don't like and keep the ones that I do like, or one that I do like. And so of these, looking at these, what I wanted was common milkweed with the sun rising behind it. And there's bugs on the common milkweed, and you can kind of see. And so now what I'm looking for is maybe a good shot of that bee. And because I took multiple pictures, I've got multiple options of which one. Don't like that one. Oh, and keep in mind, I'm doing this during my morning walk. I've got 2 golden retrievers connected to my left hand. And so I'm trying to take a picture with my right hand. Okay. So let's go ahead and develop this one. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to straighten it out. Okay. Then I'm going to go in here and crop it. Then I'm going to increase the texture. The texture makes it just a little bit crisper, but you have to watch out. If you give too much texture, it can get hard and crispy. A little bit of clarity, a little bit of vibrance. And you can go through these filters here. Yeah, or I could go vivid. Woo, that's pretty vivid. Editing can really make things interesting. Feel free to see, this makes the sunrise nice, but it mutes the flower and the bee. If you go to black and white, if you go to black and white, you kind of lose your summer morning and it becomes kind of cold. So this is what it looks like right now. That seems kind of dark. Now that seems kind of blue. Okay, that I like. I like warm shadows with a little bit of texture and maybe just a teensy bit more vibrance. And then what I do, export it, give it a name. And there it is. Now, some of you may have liked that better, but I like a little more muted color. So that's my process of editing something. And each person's going to have something completely different. You want to say anything about your editing thoughts, Barb?
It's just personal preference. I use a different program, and so if people have, everybody uses a different program, but I think cropping is a great tool because rarely do we get the scene exactly the way we want it, and there may be distracting things in the corners of it, in the background of it. So cropping it to really hone in on your image is important. I almost always do some basic exposure adjustments, some minor color stuff. I don't like to go overboard on things. It's real easy to go overboard on editing because the tools are there and you can do it. And it seems that in social media, those with some outlandish colors get a lot of likes and comments. It's not my personal preference, but it's whatever you prefer, whatever your intent was in the image. So I think, as Jill said, editing is a very personal preference, but play around with it. There's a lot of things that you can do. You can undo them, see what all the different sliders and options do on and filters, just play or spend a lot of time playing around and see what you like.
Very good, folks. This will be available as a recording and it'll be up on YouTube. Thank you, Barb, for joining me. I appreciate you.